All right. What's up, guys? It's Will and Chris back with another weekly episode of the podcast. We were missing him last week, but Chris is back with us again today. We're gonna start off like we always do, just with a conversation through the majors, and then we'll get into everything else that's going on. So, without further
Let me
ado,
share
let's
my
take a look at
screen.
Bitcoin.
All right.
I
So BTC on the daily.
before we get even deeper into it, I just want to say I think it's hilarious that the local bottom, at least for now, it looks like a pretty significant bottom, was literally on July 4th when none of us Americans were paying any attention, and so we all missed the bottom. It's so classic.
Oh man, amazing.
Uh, but yeah, I mean,
Oh man,
a nice
looks good though.
V-shaped recovery here. It looks really good.
Looks great,
We
man. It's so
popped down
bullish.
out of the bottom of the range for a little bit. I got a bit nervous, I won't lie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I honestly thought we're going below. I thought we'd drop back and hit the sort of like mid 40s ish. I didn't think we'd go below that, but yeah, I mean, this we definitely came back faster than I thought. We had a nice little pump. And is this when did we really go up? Is this when Trump got shot?
That was Trump got shot, and then we got ETH ETF new date from from the Bloomberg analysts, who everybody just treats as like the truth sayers now. So hopefully they're right.
And this is Germany, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Germany selling.
that was Germany.
Germany
Kind and
sells.
gentle selling pressure from the German government. But yeah, I mean, I
Oh
think
man.
like altcoins have been dropping for I don't know 3 or 4 months now. Bitcoin's been in this downtrend for 2 or 3 months. I think this not only wiped out quite a lot of short positions. We can take a look at the liquidation chart and what it looks like now after, but um, yeah, I think this was a much needed bounce here for sure. I could feel I've been incredibly bullish this whole time, and even I was getting a little bit nervous about where things were going, which usually is a good signal that things are going to be reversing.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, I think it has been interesting to see, despite we know that the ETH ETF is coming next week, at least according to Bloomberg analysts. It's been surprising to see ETH not really hugely outperforming anything, um, which kind of makes me think that people are trying to front run this low inflows narrative that I've been seeing floating around. Um, I guess I'd love to hear Chris's thoughts on where you think inflows will be, but it's clear that the market is not pricing in inflows being very significant, because even though
Totally.
we are definitely pumping right now, but this is not billions of dollars every month in
No.
inflows type of pumping. So yeah,
And it
what do
doesn't
you
look
think about
great
this?
either. At
Hmm.
least the things I see on the web, which is of course a reliable source of information, which you should base all your decisions off of. It seems like the inflow story is moderate. Actually, no, I think it's being too generous. It looks weak. At least it seems like it's going to be weak. And not very good. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel great. But ultimately, these things always take time. Even the BTC inflows have been, relatively speaking, like okay. And
We've
so
picked
so
up
I
back up recently.
yeah,
We definitely had a
yeah,
slow
fair enough.
period, but I
Definitely.
think we had IBIT had alone like 200 mil in inflows yesterday,
Yeah, it
and
was
a couple
260, I
other.
think. Yeah, yeah. Pretty serious. So
That's
so it looks,
serious.
but this is what we want, Like I think this stuff is compounding, and it just takes time. But yeah, the idea that like the minute we go out, we're gonna get a huge slew of inflows. That's not. I don't think that's a real thing.
Yep.
ETH is even to the trad audience, BTC is still the thing. Because it just sort of matches it's a cleaner analogy, right, in their minds, right, of just sort of digital gold. Larry Fink was on stage yesterday talking about digital gold and shilling, and of course, you got to admire the guy for just being out there, just pumping the fuck out of his bags.
Yep.
Just what an absolute legend. So it's not even a big part of portfolio. It's not even like a big product for them to sell yet, and he's just out there nonstop shilling it. So just absolute Chad. But yeah, like it's still the BTC has a cleaner narrative for them, whereas ETH is just harder to grok and understand. You have to think about supply. You have to think about sort of this like world computer type story, right? You have to think about L2s. You got to think about, all these other things that come along with it, right? And so like I think it's a bit of a trickier story to digest and think about as an asset. It's not a clean analogy, right? It's five stories in one. Whereas BTC is just like clean, put your money there, don't think about it, look at the gold ETF before, blah blah blah, right? And so I think it'll take a bit of time for the market to digest. But I think once they digest it, they'll realize, okay, like cool, if BTC is digital gold, we've got basically the equivalent of a shiny rock, but just on the interweb, right? Whereas like with ETH, there's a lot more. It's a lot more dynamic and sort of built into the system itself, and so the shrinking supply, making it usable, L2s, all of this make it a much more interesting asset to hold with much bigger, with much more sort of utility in theory, which makes it could go up in these things. So I think inflows will go, but I don't think it'll be a strong start. I think it'll be moderate. People are going to explore, get into it, and it's just going to take time for people to understand that justice. Remember, the other side of the big bag is people that are old, and like who don't use crypto and are just like, bigger bags. And also their incentive is mostly to keep things chill for themselves, right? Like they need to sell a new product for their audience, right? And their customers, but also they're not trying to, they're not going to try and rock the boat too much, right? Like at the end of the day, they still are trying to manage their relationship with their customers, and it's a 1 to 2, 3, 4. I think 5 is way overshooting it, right? I think it's a 1% of their portfolio max, for now, and so it's going to take time to on ramp this stuff, but could be good.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
so
I
we'll see.
think to your point, like it's been a while since I've seen a TradFi guy. In crypto, we have a lot of these, but a TradFi guy be as as good at shilling as Larry Fink is. I've been really impressed,
100%.
and I think he's really nailed down on this narrative that he's been pushing for. I don't know, I guess about a year now is probably the last time I remember him talking about, or the first time I remember him talking about it, which is that this idea of tokenizing basically everything that exists in the current traditional economy. And I personally think the narrative they're going to be pushing is, all this on-chain gambling stuff aside, which I love, but is not as applicable to a normie, so to speak, audience. I think if you were to pitch it instead as being able to have exposure to what may very well upgrade the entire traditional financial system via tokenization and other improvements.
Yep.
I think that's the narrative that at least that I hope they hammer, and that I think they will hammer, which I
Yep.
think is a powerful one. But again, to your point, like it's much more complicated than, hey, this thing just has a capped supply and you should treat it like gold.
Yep.
That's this very
Exactly.
simple monkey clicks button and hopes it goes up. ETH definitely has a lot more baggage, so to speak, but I also think that's part of its strength. Like there's more depth to the asset, which means, in my opinion at least, I think there's a lot more potential. So yeah, I'm curious to see where inflows go. I'm not somebody who's great at predicting these, but I tend to think they're going to be higher than what a lot of people are saying. Maybe not at first. I think I said this on the podcast last week. I don't expect ETH to get a crazy overnight pump. We can use Bitcoin as an example. That didn't happen then, and they had really strong inflows. We have a lot of negative forces or flows, like the Grayscale ETH Trust will be selling a lot of their ETH. We also have other stuff like Mount Gox is finally repaying their creditors. I've heard FTX creditors are getting their money soon as well. So like it, in my opinion, a lot of it is really bullish, but there are also some negative things going on, which I think could impact flows. So
Totally.
we'll see. We'll see.
But I
I'm
think it's
still
one of those things.
majorly
Just like you said, I
bullish.
think it'll be moderate until it's not.
Yep.
It's that kind of thing about it. Like I think it will surprise us, and by the time it surprises, it's too late. It's kind of how it feels. Like especially with crypto, we've seen this. It happens every single time. When it rips, it just rips. Especially when retail gets involved. That's when it really rips. Like the degens do one thing, but when retail gets involved, is when it really goes absolutely nuclear. And so, which actually I think the interesting thing is like degens are like, look, people think degens drive price action, like people like that push things. But it's actually retail that just makes things go absolutely fucking nuclear or not. And so when that happens, though, it'll be violent. I think it's going to just fucking absolutely, go absolutely nuclear when that happens because if even if you're just zooming out, very simply put, if you are selling a product to your customers, meaning do you put your money in stocks, in equities, in real estate, in alternative assets, or private funds, whatever it is, thinking about upside, right, and where it could go, there really is no cleaner story than crypto in general, right? And I think the asset has proved itself both lindy enough that it's a thing, and number two, it's still tiny comparatively speaking to everything else, right? And we've seen the games of this, and so it's very easy to be like, look, take some of the net worth, don't think about it, right? It's going to happen, right? I think no one, people believe it's going to be here regardless, just what form and shape and how big, right? If that's the case, 1-2% is absolutely worth the gamble, right? Without even thinking about it, and so I think that's already happening. That mentality will continue to seep through, and when that happens, it's just going to be incredibly violent, and it feeds itself. Meaning, when people start to do it, the gains start to go up, right? And it's classic wealth effect stuff, right? It's classic everything. Like BTC rips, and then later ETH rips, and then we go to Sol or whatever. It's going to happen the exact same way, right? The minute like this stuff really rips, and people start making money to ETH, they'll go to the next one, and the next one, and it'll start to really bring that money in, And so, I think again, we've talked about this a million times, right? So it's nothing new, but it is always funny that like every week, when it after it does happen, everyone's like, "Oh, so not everything that happened at once." It's like taking time. It's like, yeah, no shit, it's gonna take some time, But it is tracking to plan. I think, which is gonna be great. And then, but when it does flip, it will flip. And I think it feels like it's coming, at least in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it, Will, but like even I think
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend the other day and said, the Trump assassination attempt was sort of like the mark of the next crypto bull run, and I generally believe that too. And if that's the case, when do you think things are turning the other way? It seems like we have a lot of positive catalysts and narratives in front of us, right? With the election stuff, we've got potential rate cuts on the line, plus this overhang of selling, will at least disappear at some point, in the near future. Where do you think we go? Do you think it's near? Do you think it's how are you positioning yourself for all this?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've been being patient. I've been trading a fair amount, both what I call actual coins and meme coins. I personally think, while I love meme coins, I think they've kind of reached peak attention. And so while I am bullish on the market in the short and medium term, um, I think we're going to get a big shift of where liquidity is allocated versus like meme coins versus kind of actual technology, DeFi stuff, layer one chains, layer twos, stuff like that. It feels like, and part of this is from I guess ETF flows and institutional involvement. But it feels like, and I would like to think that the market as a whole is starting to mature. I personally think that, uh, again, primarily because of the institutional involvement now, I don't think we're going to be getting the same ridiculously volatile 80+% drawdowns on the majors as we've seen in the past. Which also potentially means that upside is less volatile. But to go back to something, Chris, that you were talking about, I remember Kathy Wood. I don't know if it was in a tweet or an investor memo or something. I think it was a memo maybe, but she said that if 5% of the assets of all asset managers in the world were to allocate that
Right,
5%
right.
to Bitcoin, Bitcoin would be worth about $3.7 million a token. Now, I think 5% is insane, at least with where we are right now and where I see us being in the next decade even. I think that's insane. But I think 1% is not insane. And
Yep,
if you do the
I
math on
agree.
that, you're looking at like $600,000 to $700,000 of Bitcoin. And again, that's just on the institutional side. We haven't even touched retail. We haven't touched the crypto natives. So I think, like, look, yeah, it's still a very small market, and we're now playing in the same arena as what I would call the big boys, and so things change. A lot of people are trying to time the top. They're getting nervous that things are going to crash all around them. I think while we may get again a liquidity shift from a lot of the assets that crypto natives have been playing with, um, I'm very bullish on where we're going in the short term. Yeah, this is probably a
Totally.
good time to take a look at this. So this is a I love looking at liquidation levels, partly because I don't trade on leverage. So I'm never hurt by looking at them. But if we take a look at this graph here, basically the way this is set up is on the left side, we have long liquidation prices on Bitcoin, and on the right side in green, we have the short liquidation. So we can see the cumulative here. And if you'll notice, even after this massive V-shaped recovery that we had off of the July 4th lows, the short interest liquidation prices are not only much larger cumulatively, than the long liquidations, but they're also much closer to the current price. So what that means to me is we are primed to rip right through those. If there's one thing crypto loves doing, it's liquidating people who are overlevered, and it
Yes.
happens almost every time. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. A lot of bullish
And
things
a
going
stunning
on.
amount of 100x leverage here.
Yeah, sorry. I will say these are estimates because Binance doesn't expose their full data, but yeah, no, it's insane.
Which is just so hilariously crypto. But I mean, to go back, that I think, just like you said, right? Like, the way I think about this, at least for the listeners, is if we look at shorts, right? If the funny thing about crypto is everything is public, so you can see where the activity is, where shorts are, where the longs are positioned, and really what you're trying to say here is, by seeing this, you can very clearly see that there's a lot at this, like, let's call it 60, 69, 67-ish price, right? And we're at what, 66-ish right now in Bitcoin, right? And so if that's the case, if you have a big enough bag, you can just call the boys and get everyone to start a bid, or pull out a bunch of shorts, pull out a bunch of positions of your own, telegraph the price up, and just cause the cascading liquidations as price telegraphs through these levels and causes these shorts to close, which then will send the price even further up, right? So really, you can open up a very nice long here and make yourself some nice money if you believe that people will go through. And this happens all the time, right? On the other side as well, when people are shorting and you can see the levels, people love to play with that as well. Or excuse me, when people are
Yeah.
people love to play with that as well and force it past here, so you can really see where it's going. So it's funny to see where things are going and kind of how. And so, like, if you look at that, just like Will said, I think earlier, just for the listeners, like, if you're referencing meme coins and the cycle and what's going to rip, I think if you think about, like, the way these cycles work historically have been, a cascade down from the biggest tokens to the smallest tokens, more serious to less serious in so many words. And so you kind of start with Bitcoin, usually has the big run up, right? And then as things start to peak there and come down, if ETH comes up, right? And then as a result, Ethereum altcoins also go up as a result, maybe Uniswap or Maker or whatever it might be, right? And eventually you go to Solana and then the shitters and so on. And then eventually you go straight to meme land. And usually celeb coins kind of mark the top. That's really it, and it's all going to hell after that. And this cycle has been noticeably different, because we kind of got going around late 2023 with the front running of the BTC ETF narrative. So we really started to go up from there's mostly a BTC move, if I remember correctly, but their alts were going nuts too. Select alts. I remember Say was going crazy, Injecto was going nuts. A bunch of those were really ripping. Celestia obviously was going absolutely nuclear, right? So you had a bunch of alts go up then, and then right around January, we had this strange thing where instead of BTC kind of going up and then ETH having a nice run up and then ETH alts and then going up, we went straight to the other side of the curve and we just went straight to celeb coins and meme coins, really, right? And that's when you saw Bonk, you saw Whiff, and it's really Solana focused this time as well. Ethereum's kind of been like left in the dark the whole time, right? Usually you go from, again, large to small. Ethereum is definitely the second biggest asset class here, biggest asset here, excuse me, and it hasn't really gotten the light, the light of day, and seen in love here. So Solana memes really began to run as a result. And so, again, I think Whiff was really the sort of best example, going from nothing, right? You could have bought it openly in the market at 100K market cap and saw it go all the way up to 4 billion, right? And then even getting listed, plenty of liquidity to dump into and everything. So, like, a very strong asset, a good growth story. And so if you look at Whiff, that's a good example of like what actually happened. Meanwhile, you would argue that Whiff at 4 billion was worth more than MakerDAO, which is, a CDP, just like one of the core products of crypto, right? Which is a stable coin. It's a lending protocol. There's so much going on there that it's actually hilarious to think that like, this meme coin that does absolutely nothing is worth more than something that's like a sort of a, one of the core primitives of crypto, right? Really powering a bunch of the sort of on-chain economy. And so it's just one of those interesting things where this cycle, we didn't go from, big to small. We went from big to absolute shitters, and we went straight to sleb coins, right? And that really like kind of marked the top, I think, especially with Iggy Azalea and a couple of these things, and Mother or whatever, blah, blah, Jason Derulo. I mean, we just kind of got into a weird place with all this stuff. And even Messi has been, shilling some meme
Yeah.
coins on his Insta account, right? So like, we really got to that quickly. And what Will's saying is, especially with the institutional interest coming in and the ETH ETF, this sort of like forgotten asset of ETH, which everyone has been shitting on and saying is dead, is going to come back and really have a moment where you're going to focus on not necessarily utility, but so at least useful coins, right? And useful
Yep.
tokens and things that have a part in the ecosystem versus the pure vapor of meme coins, which again, meme
Yep.
coins aren't bad, but just on a relative basis, one is supposed to do something. Whether it does or not is a different question, right? But one is supposed to do something, and one is very notably like, we are not trying to do anything. We are just, writing a shit and writing the narrative, So that's kind of like how Will's positioning it. And I generally agree. I think there is a time for that. I think it seems to be the trend on CT2 to kind of people think it look like these DeFi coins are like, the last cycle coins that have utility are going to be the interesting ones that come up here. So I think it's an interesting thing for sure. And I'm watching it too. I still think memes have a run, but I'm not as convinced in all-time highs for all of them again. I think maybe sub-select ones. Maybe Whiff has another time. I think Bonk perhaps, right, or maybe Popcat or whatever. Some of these things, but Ethereum still hasn't had its moment yet. I think L2 still have a moment to go. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's coming in that could be more interesting down the line for this next cycle. So for
Yeah,
the
I
remainder of
think
this cycle.
it feels to me like um like market psychology is much different this time. And I don't know if it's because well, for one thing, like retail, well, depends on your definition of retail, I guess. But retail isn't here,
Right.
which last time retail started joining when Bitcoin started running.
Yep.
So we had more or rather we had more I don't want to call it dumb money, but we had people who like didn't really know what they were doing, which right now it feels like 80% of people kind of know what they're doing. They know the games that are played. We haven't had any of these like ridiculous APY Ponzi schemes because everybody knows they crash immediately. Everybody knows how to play the games, um, which I think is part of the reason why everything has been so focused on meme coins. And I think the other side of that is um, we've had a we had this long, probably 2 year trend or so, where every single big protocol, whether it had exciting tech or not, launched at a crazy high valuation that made no sense. And the only reason they were able to do it was because there was low supply circulating and the price could get propped up. And everybody was fed this narrative that FDV doesn't matter, that the tech doesn't really matter even because it doesn't have to justify the valuation. And I think it messed with a lot of traders' heads. And now we've gotten to the point where the pendulum flew back all the other way, and everybody's like, we don't want these overvalued VC scams because they are justifying to themselves that the price should be lower, but they're not using the same logic with meme coins. And I think that pendulum will swing back. Um, as much as I love meme coins, and I'd be really pissed if all my meme coins crashed because I have significant money in them. But I think the pendulum's swinging, as all things do in this space and otherwise. It feels like it's time for the tech rotation, so to speak, especially if ETF issuers are pushing the tokenization narrative that we discussed earlier. That's all ETH. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
I'm focusing on tech for allocation, and I'm focusing on EVM compatible stuff.
Yep.
I think that's kind of the best bet right now.
Yeah. I'm probably the same way. I think I'm allocating to tokens that I think have potential, and potential usually means there has lasting staying power, which means utility is a proxy for that. It doesn't have to be, right? And so
Hmm.
let's not get confused about utility and how good something is in the token. But
Yep.
you know, you want to think about staying power and sort of like, is it a thing or not, and allocating to those because those will have the run up. when it comes time to play shitters, you will know. Like, so now's not the time to sort of, like, in my opinion, right now is not the time to load up on shitters and wait for the run. I think it's good to have a bag here and there, but like, it'll be time. You'll know when it's time to play shitters. It certainly doesn't feel like it yet, right? These things are very simple. It's funny, every cycle, I get a bunch of texts at the top of the bull run, which is like, I think I'm going to quit my job and just trade shitters professionally, and I'm always like, please, for fuck's sake, don't do that. And inevitably some people do. And this is one of those moments where it's like, you don't want to play, like, this is about timing the cycle to understand when it's easy mode and to grab as much cash as possible during that, versus thinking this is a nonstop game that you can just play all the time, right? It's just, sometimes easy. Don't get confused. You're not a fucking genius, just as everything's going up, versus the other side where it's like, okay, this is actually me. I have some unique skill and talent, meaning I troll Telegram and buy shitters on Deck Screener, so I'm a genius. Like, it turns out if it was that easy, it'd be that easy, So, but yeah.
I think,
but maybe
I mean, yeah, everybody learns that lesson, I think.
totally.
I mean, I think my portfolio from last cycle had like an 80% drawdown from all-time high or something, and I thought I was a
Definitely.
genius when I made all that money. Like, I
Oh,
was like, oh,
100%.
this is going forever. I can keep doing this easy. And of course, it's not the
Exactly.
case.
I remember those
Everybody
calculators from last
learns.
cycle, like, I
The
mean, everyone
Lambo
had those
calculator.
spreadsheets. Everyone had those spreadsheets where you
Yep.
plug in the numbers like, well, if only we just continue to
Like,
fucking
holy
5x
shit.
every single day, I'll be fucking crazy rich. I still
really
have
good
some of them.
times.
They were
Those
hilarious,
really good
funny to look
times.
back and talk, but look back at all. But I mean, like you said,
We haven't
shifting to
had
what's
that this
coming.
cycle. We haven't had that at all. Like,
No,
I mean,
no.
you could say there was meme coin mania where, like, sure, maybe you could hit a gamble and make it big, but like, we haven't had anything close to what
Not nearly
DeFi
the same.
summer was like. Yeah.
No, DeFi Summer last cycle was just absolutely legendary, where you could print
Yeah.
$1 million in 24 hours, and
Yep.
and it was not. I wouldn't say it was common, but it was not uncommon.
It happened every day.
It
Yeah.
happened all the time, and to people you knew, and it was around you, and it was just one of those things where the TikTok feed, for you, it was all over. Just everyone's shilling tokens and making rap
Yeah.
songs about fucking
I
random
mean,
shit. It was like a
that's
whole
what
thing,
gets the retail in, It's they
Yeah.
see their friends winning. It's not they see crypto natives who spend 18 hours a day on their laptop winning.
It's
Like,
not
that's
about
not what
it's not
draws.
going deep into the latest Eigen paper, talking about ABSs and shit,
No,
Uh,
no.
but
Absolutely not.
I agree with you. But like I think just like you said, I think maybe on a more serious note, like, I think the tokenization stuff is super interesting, and the tying with the real world is the interesting piece here, in my opinion. I think that's where a lot of it comes. I actually think ETH in general, right? If you think about where ETH is going narrative wise, like, I think Solana very clearly is sort of playing this like sort of low cap shitter land, right? And it's not, again, I don't say that
That's where it should
pejoratively.
stay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you say it pejoratively, but I don't say it pejoratively. Like, it's just a thing, and maybe they'll find something else to do with it, but at least that is for now, and it's fine, and BTC is what the BTC is, and ETH is like every larger asset. It moves more slowly, but it feels much more solid in that stance,
Well, I
and
think that the pump that we had on ETF approval news was larger than the entire fully diluted valuation of Solana just on ETH in that one day. Like, just to
right.
give context about the size, it's a totally
Fair.
different ballgame. Yeah.
I agree with that. If you just look at like the TVL or even just like it, so Sol may have lots of transactions, but it's all small things, Like, again, we've talked about this before, but like you look at Deck Screen and some of the Sol transactions, you're like people DCAing like $2 into things, So just like, every a DCA every 5 minutes buying $2 worth is like, what are you doing? But ETH shifting to this more, I feel like institutional narrative, like I think is both the wrong framing, but also true at the same time, because I think
Yeah.
people hear that and they get scared or maybe sad or sort of like think about, oh, the good days are behind it. It's going to be a business now. And like, it's not, but it does mean that, again, with L2s and all this kind of stuff, you really are able to utilize Ethereum at the core level of what it is, which is it's a bunch of distributed machines, right, and a bunch of working together, right, to build this sort of like, self-sovereign, world computer, which is amazing, right? And then from there, you can build stuff on top that scales and does whatever it is, right? And so, I'm mega bullish on that because I think, look, at the end of the day, it's as simple as inflows are going to drive prices here, and do we just need more inflows and more people, more use cases? And that ends up driving more use cases in the real world outside, right? Because right now, the knock on all this stuff is like, it's fun to play in crypto land, But then going back to the outside world is tough. Like, and that's why people stay in crypto. So being able to blend these two worlds together in some sense is going to be a huge piece of this, in my opinion. I think that's where a lot of this comes into play. And so when you think about, Larry Fink and the whole tokenization story and modernizing the whole financial system, being able to take what you have and actually own it, right? Instead of having it be custody by somebody else and have them wildly gamble with it. We've seen this a million times, right? Is a ridiculous way to do things. Being able to take out loans and be able to just use your assets the way you want to is a huge thing, right? And so it feeds all of this narrative around tokenization. Obviously, I'm bullish on it. I run a company called Plume, which is it's an ecosystem and a network focused specifically on real world assets and tokenization and helping usher this type of stuff in by taking the features of tokenization and kind of baking it into the chain itself. So, like, obviously we're very bullish on it, but I think there's a lot more to come there. But you can already see with Larry Fink doing stuff here, you can see all the other banks beginning to come in and think about how to do this stuff. Right? I think it's still very early. It's not quite where it's not up only from here. But it is, I think, a major unlock that is bringing things into that dimension. I think, again, a lot of people wonder, does that affect me then in crypto? Because it's just going to be some private permission chain or whatever, right? And historically it has been, but they've realized is, I guess, Larry Fink, like Larry leading the way here. This is all just on ETH mainnet. This is just like, on Ethereum, on a public chain that you can interact and see everything out there. I think people, it's the right foundation, right mindset, and economics change behavior. And so, sure, right now, putting this on chain, it really reduces the fund admin costs and allows these folks to process, audit, manage, and deal with these funds in an easier way by having it on Ethereum, right? But the real unlock is going to be by having it on a public chain. You can then use other things with it and be able to use collateral and take things around. And that's when you begin to start to see where it can go. And when they start making money from that, right, and start to see, wow, there's new use cases. I can build new products. I can sell them to people in different ways. I can, I can do all kinds of the crypto nonsense with this. Then it'll start to really sing. And when that happens, it'll all come flooding in, right? And then it'll start to be very, very interesting. I think we want to build a way that where it's not, sure, they come into crypto and it's like permissioned off somewhere else. It's mixed with the rest of us and we can use this stuff in a real way. So I think that's where it comes into play. It'll be super interesting. And maybe one offshoot of that is even talking about like, one very light topical way this is like coming into play today is through something like Polymarket, right? It's not quite the same thing as tokenization, but again, forgetting the word tokenization, the idea of like merging elements of the real world with crypto, so it's not just pure dog coins, right? Is an interesting thing. And you can already see relative to the news or relative to, even Twitter, like Polymarket becomes the authoritative source of like how things are trending and what people believe at the time, right?
Well, I
And you
mean,
can see,
Trump has been, I think all of his election polling data posts on Truth Social have been taken directly from his Polymarket page.
yep, yep, exactly, right. It's
I don't know,
crazy
I
to
don't think
see,
he even knows it's a crypto platform, to be honest, but that speaks
right?
to how well it's been built, I think.
Totally, totally. And you shouldn't know it's crypto, right? Like you can come here and just bet on whatever it is, and bet on these individual events and see and the way the prices are, right, sort of show you how these things are trending and what people believe at the time. So I think it's super interesting to see how this is happening and just, a nice meld of what's happening in the real world versus what's happening here, right, in crypto when you can sort of, you know, leverage the architecture of crypto, which is 24/7 global real time instant, right, permissionless, and see how that actually allows it to come together to something that actually can be useful. Look, making money for yourself on shit is useful, but this is another way of doing it, right? Where you can really come in and see how this is coming into play. So I think it's incredibly interesting to see this kind of stuff happen. And like, again, everyone has talked about utility, and a lot of people say utility is bearish for crypto, and like, and I'm like sort of in that camp as well. But it is interesting to see this stuff happen,
Yeah.
and I think it's very cool. So.
I mean, yeah, again, I think it's like a market wide, everything is a psyop, but it was this
Yeah.
market wide psyop that like anything with utility is bad. The only reason people thought that is because all these utility things were either fake utility that were actually just Ponzi schemes and collapsed, or they were actual utilities that launched at like a ridiculous valuation.
Yep,
I don't
exactly.
blame people for being scared of it, but the issue is in thinking that utility is the problem when that's not the case. It's the people claiming they have utility that are the problem.
Yep, I agree with that. Oh, damn, this is a good one. Anyway, so
That's awesome.
I don't know. I'll probably throw a bid on that. But anyway, like it's just hilarious this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think like you said, it's great to see, and like you said, the utility meme is most because it just has not worked out. Not because utility is bad. Like it's it's undoubtedly good. It just has not been good so far, right? And like you said, or it's been. I think it's a good point. Like it's been at such a ridiculous price that it does remove the utility at all. So
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
Starknet launched at 25 billion FDV or whatever. They have like 20 users. Like that makes no sense. I don't blame
yeah,
people for hating it. Like,
yeah, 100%. ZK Sync's another one,
yeah.
right? So let's see. Yeah,
Hey,
it's
I'm
just
actually curious. What is Starknet at now?
I actually haven't looked. Oh my
Oh
God,
yeah, she's come down as she
6 billion.
deserves.
Jesus, not
Yeah,
great.
so launched it. What is that? A 5x from here? Yeah, about $25 billion valuation.
Yep,
That
I
makes
remember it
no
was 20
sense. I
plus.
mean,
No,
just
it doesn't.
literally 0 cents.
It really doesn't.
But you
And
get
and
you
not
get
to
stuff
mention,
like that, and like people, of course, have a visceral reaction to it. Like
yep,
it's not crazy.
nope. And again, like nobody, and it's a lot of. I think the cynicism also comes in because a lot of these are like we've known it's trash for a while. We've known it's not a thing, right? They've raised so much money from the big funds, and they just needed to unload, and they had to do it at a price that made it work, and blah blah blah, right? So even this was a $3 billion price, open at 30, right? 30 cents, and now it's what? So this is half down as well for ZK Sync. So there's just a lot of these types of things out there that make people cynical
I will
about these
say
things.
I'm as much as I'm pissed that my airdrop was not worth nearly as much as I thought it was going to be. I was impressed that Blast did not just open at a ridiculous FDV or something. Like I think
Yeah,
that's kind of part of the game plan there. We don't have to get super into it because I think I talked about it last week, but I was very surprised that they didn't just launch at a crazy valuation and do the same thing all of these other chains have been doing.
yep,
Now we have some room
100%.
for price appreciation. Yeah.
Yep, totally. Cool. Well, I think that's it for this week. We've talked about a bunch of different things. Um, Long story short, seems like the Golden Bull Run
Mm.
can resume now, and so should be good news, and we'll watch how things play out. Um, but yeah, exciting stuff, and we'll stay on the charts, we'll stay watching. I think Germany seems to be done selling for now. We've got a couple of things in front of us. That plus the EPTF, a couple big
Plume
narratives and
launch.
catalysts in front of us, plus election stuff. Plume launch coming up. We'll talk more about that maybe next week, and we've got I'll show some stuff, but it should be exciting stuff, and
Awesome.
we'll go
Well,
from
thank
there.
you everybody for listening in, and we'll catch you
All
next
right.
week. Later.